We get a brief summary of Wu Gunsang's life. Learning martial arts was always easy for Wu, but though he was extremely talented, he wasn't having fun. Wu became disinterested in training and became interested in women. But one night, he met a woman who became his biggest mistake. After his drunken encounter with this woman, she took her own life, and as punishment, he was forced to spend a whole year training in isolation. Now Wu is face to face with Wool, who has spent most of his life training to kill him. But Wu thinks Wool was sent by that girl's father to avenge her death. Wool has no idea what Wu is talking about, and can only focus on how overwhelming he is. Every ounce of energy seeping out of Wu is intense and terrifying. It almost seems as if he's made of thousands of blades. Wu rushes Wool and attacks. Wool is using a ton of energy just blocking Wu's attacks. Wool is able to sneak in a kick, and his tricks are really annoying Wu. Wu counters Wool and sends him to the ground, hoping to deal the final blow. Wool is able to dodge the attack, and he runs for a blade. Wool fires the blade at Wu, but it's blocked. Everything Wool does is blocked, but he has no choice but to keep attacking. Wool's attacks are blocked yet again, and Wu reveals the Ching Chang secret technique. 72 sword waves. Wool knows he's in trouble, so as Wu is rushing towards him, Wool grabs the woman Wu was with to shield him. Wu is annoyed yet again, so he attempts to strike Wool with his sword. As he's being attacked, Wool remembers telling Yayo that only time would tell if he was a scapegoat or a wolf. Wool uses this as motivation to fight back. Wu is surprised Wool was able to defend the secret martial art technique of the Ching Chang sect. Wool learned it to death in order to survive. He's confident in demolishing it. Wool uses the swift mind technique to maneuver around Wu. Wool sees a window and takes his chance. Wool sends his sword right through Wu's chest. Wu can't believe it. Wool has completed the objective and avenged the Blood Shadow group. There's panic and unrest in the sect. The bells toll inside Wu Gunsang's residence. We see Jin devastated. He doesn't understand how something like this could happen. Then, the sect's greatest warrior realizes something. He tells the sect leader that they need to dispose of that girl. The sect leader questions how he could suggest disposing of a disciple of the sect. The sect's greatest warrior says Wu Gunsang's reputation is on the line. If word got out that he was with a girl during isolation training, his reputation would hit rock bottom, as well as theirs. This idea is upsetting to the sect leader. The sect's greatest warrior sees that, and says what's done is done. He says since Wu Gunsang is dead, their sect's reputation will collapse if nothing is done. He thinks there must have been someone who heard the assassin, someone that would benefit from the fall of Wu Gunsang and the Ching Chang sect. The sect's greatest warrior says they must not let that happen no matter what. But as the sect leader thinks how to respond, they are interrupted by their brothers. They say they cannot, no matter how important the sect's reputation is, it's not as important as a human life. The sect's greatest warrior says at this rate, forget catching up to the Shaolin or the Wudong. Their gap will only widen, and they will be reduced to some mere sect. And as they ponder over that statement, Jin gets up with his son's sword. He begins walking and approaches the disciple. He says, as a disciple of their sect, I'm sure you understand. The disciple cries, and Jin says you should have helped him. The disciple begs Jin to spare her life, but it's too late. The sect leader runs to Jin and asks, what have you done? Jin says he had no choice. Wu wasn't just the hope of the Ching Chang sect, he was his everything. He can't just stand by and watch as his reputation crumbles. Jin says he will accept any punishment for his actions. Now, at the Emi sect, Ran receives a message. She cannot believe that an assassin actually killed Wu Gunsang. She is furious that all the assassins weren't captured. Her plan to rule the Ching Chang sect has been ruined by her backup plan that was no longer necessary. Zhang Hua says they need to find and eliminate the assassin responsible, because they might know the secret. Ran says the Ching Chang sect has already asked for their help. She asks Zhang Hua to gather the others. She wants them to set up the inescapable net immediately. Ran turns to Young and says she must be overjoyed now that the wedding is cancelled. Young says of course she's not happy. She just lost her husband. Ran's not sure if she's being mocked, but the disciple exits. Out in a rural area we see a farmer strolling down the road. The farmer asks what's going on, and the two men say they're looking for a criminal who has committed a grave sin. They demand the farmer identify himself, and he says his name is Trejo. He lives in a nearby village, and he's heading home after today's farming. They ask how he could be done so early, and Trejo says he finished cutting weeds early. They decide to let Trejo pass, but as he walks by, one of the men notices something off. He stops Trejo and asks how he could be so clean after farming. If you cut weeds, there must be some sort of trace, especially on the sickle. The farmer gets nervous, and the men accuse him of being the assassin that Ran said killed Wu Gunsang. They fire off a signal and call for backup. The man's suspicions were correct. It's Wall. He orders his men to capture him. Wall reveals his true identity and fights back. Wall stares the man down and reveals his new weapon. He begins choking the man and asks, "Who is this Ren you speak of?" The man says Ran is the Abyss of 9 Calamities, the leader of the Emi sect. Wall asks if she gave the man a direct order. The man says she ordered all disciples of the Emi sect to help the Qingchang sect capture the assassin, no matter what. Wall asks if the Emi sect was always that helpful towards the Qingchang sect. The man says no, and thinks to himself, his backup should be here any second. Wall tries to put the pieces together. It has to be someone who knows Wu Gunsang and is inferior to him. Someone who has the patience to invest 7 years' worth of time, as well as possess enough wealth to pour a huge amount of money into the plan. Wall concludes it has to be Ran. Backup arrives and they rush towards Wall. The man thinks he's about to be saved and tells Wall he's done. He threatens Wall again, and Wall has had enough. Wall finishes them all. Back at the Emi sect, it's reported that the assassin has broken through the martial artists' encircling net and has escaped. This gives Zhang Hua a headache, as this means the assassin is getting stronger. He says they will pursue him with all their forces, but then Young intervenes and says no. She says they won't be able to capture him that way. Zhang Hua asks Young what she means by that. Young says the fact that he hasn't been caught with an inescapable net means that he possesses skills greater than they expect. If we continue to chase him like this, we will only be seeing the back of his head. Zhang Hua asks Young for a better idea, and Young says they need to predict where he will go next. She has an idea of where he might be headed. The assassin has to be exhausted, so it's likely that he will return to the place he feels safest. That is probably the place where he was raised as an assassin for a very long time. She says they've found that the location where the Blood Shadow group raised the assassins is somewhere around Batang. Zhang Hua is annoyed with how smart Young is, but confirms that the area was being provided with many supplies. Zhang Hua says they will head to Batang and try to beat him there. They were quick to locate Wall and are chasing him down. They know he's injured, so they believe he won't last long. Wall runs up the wall and thinks he can lose them. He doesn't understand how they can predict where he's going. When Wall looks back at them, he locks eyes with Young, the mastermind behind this plan. As Wall continues running, he realizes things have gone quiet. He wonders if they have given up, but as he looks back, he sees a large burst heading right towards him. There's a large explosion. As the dust settles, we see the Qingchang sect's greatest warrior. The warrior realizes his attack was vicious and careless. He needs to capture Wall alive so they can find out who ordered the assassination. He commands his disciples to see if Wall is still alive. Watching from above is Zhang Hua. She spots Wall and rushes to attack. The Qingchang sect's greatest warrior notices that Zhang Hua is attacking with the intent to kill. On their search, they find an entrance that leads underground. They believe this is where Wall went. The Qingchang sect's greatest warrior orders his disciples to climb the rope down. The assassin must be captured alive, he says. After watching the Qingchang sect, Zhang Hua orders her disciples to do the same, but she wants the assassin dead. Both sects make their way down, and they're shocked to see this is where the Blood Shadow group raised their assassins. Then, the Qingchang sect's greatest warrior makes another shocking discovery. He sees an exact replica of the Qingchang sect. Zhang Hua notices the building too, and gets nervous. A Qingchang sect disciple also notices, and gets angry. He tells his master they must not let this slide. The Qingchang sect's greatest warrior knows this means Wu Gunsang's assassination has been planned for a long time, and it's impossible to maintain such a facility without someone's assistance. He believes there had to have been someone protecting them. Zhang Hua watches and is speechless. The warrior begins laughing and tells his disciples that capturing the assassin is their main priority right now. He reiterates that he must be captured alive. The disciples understand his terms and begin their journey. Zhang Hua approaches the warrior and says she will command her disciples to do the same. The warrior also tells her to capture him alive. He says you can do whatever you want to him, but he must be captured alive. Zhang Hua nervously accepts his requests. As she walks away, he says if the assassin loses his life, he'll be very upset. Someone has clearly looked down on their sect. He plans to hunt them down, even if the perpetrators are one of the 5 great sects. Zhang Hua says he has nothing to worry about. The two aren't even facing each other, and Zhang Hua was nervous. She knows that he is suspicious of the Mi sect. She walks away sweating and knows she has to find the assassin before the Qingchang sect does, no matter what. Young explores the cave and senses danger as soon as they entered. Everyone wants to capture the assassin, but this is his home. She thinks she knows both sects are out of their element down here. The Qingchang sect's greatest warrior finds the real one's base. He looks around and notices how massive this facility is. As he walks through the base of the real ones, he doubts assassins made this by themselves. He can't piece together who could have helped them build something like this. He finally reaches the last room in the base. The warrior walks in and immediately starts looking for clues. He brushes his hand against the wall and finds a secret pressure plate. This unveils a hole in the wall, and inside the wall is a golden tube. He opens the tube and reads the message inside. He's found the request to assassinate Wu Gunsang. Enraged, he can't believe someone destroyed the Qingchang sect's future for a measly 500,000 yang. Then, off to the side, he notices an even larger hole in the wall. He walks in and sees a book sitting on a table. But this isn't an ordinary room. This is a pit with thousands of snakes. He walks towards the table and looks at the book. It's a book from the Nine Demon School. He grabs the book and believes the Nine Demon School is the clan that disappeared a very long time ago during the War of Heaven and Demons. As he thinks about the situation, the search for Wool continues. The Qingchang sect disciples find grains of rice on the floor, and they think he's nearby. They tell each other not to let their guards down, as you never know when the assassin will attack. They walk away together, but one of the disciples falls behind. He should have stayed closer to the group, because sure enough, Wool attacks. The other disciples don't notice because they still can't believe the assassin lived underground. One of the disciples believes the assassin must have cheated in his battle with Wu Gunsang. He thinks there's no way Wu could have lost an honest battle, and Wool didn't appreciate that, so he takes care of him. Now, the others notice their fallen friends and begin to scatter, giving Wool the advantage to take them out one by one. One disciple remains, and though he is afraid, he dares the assassin to show his face. Wool has a little fun with him and turns the torches off. The other group of disciples is having no luck. The Qingchang sect disciple Ming thinks if running away was his sole purpose, he would have done whatever it took to outrun his pursuers and hide. But instead, he's lured his enemies into the domain he knows best. He believes Wool is trying to fight until the end in the environment he's most familiar with. Ming wants to be the one to capture the assassin, as it would catapult his reputation in the sect. He begins giving orders to the other disciples and wants them to follow him in pairs. And above everything else, he wants them to keep their guards up. But with his next step, Ming steps on a pressure plate. He yells for everyone to watch out, as a fury of arrows fire at them. Ming didn't expect to walk into a trap, and some of the disciples are injured. He looks up and sees another round coming. Ming warns everyone again, and can't believe anyone could live in a cave with traps like this. The story continues. See you in the next part.